Hello and welcome to another video in my Of Mice and Men GCSE revision series. Today we're going to be looking particularly at candy and asking the question, how does John Steinbeck use candy to show the ageism and ableism in 1930s American society? So as always, you might be used to this from my revision videos. Before we get going, I want us to ask ourselves, what is John Steinbeck trying to say about society in 1930s America? And I suggest you pause the video now and really think about why John Steinbeck included candy and what would you write if this was an exam question right now. And please do put your thoughts below in the comments because it may well be that you have some ideas or a way of expressing your ideas that is new to the rest of us, and it'll be really good to hear them. But before we dive into candy, let's really define our terms. So first of all, capitalism. So capitalism is an economic system focused on profit making and private companies, private businesses. If we think about the social context of Mice and Men in the 1930s, the 1920s were the roaring 20s. The economy was on the up. It was a good time economically, and then suddenly 1929, the Wall Street crash, the economy crashes, and huge numbers of people are pushed into poverty, are made unemployed, and it's a really, really terrible time. So the kind of focus on a society where money and profit was the outcome, well, actually, that meant that when the Wall Street crash happened, people didn't have, security. There weren't kind of welfare systems in place to support them. So that's a very important thing when we're thinking about Candy. Candy's our older character. He's disabled because he's lost a hand, and for Candy, it's tragic because when he is canned, when he's fired from the ranch, he has no fallback. So we need to think, what was John Steinbeck perhaps using candy to say about capitalism in 1930s America? Just to be clear as well about what I mean when I say ageism and ableism. Ageism is when you discriminate against somebody because of their age, and ableism is when you discriminate against somebody because of their disability. So it may well be that John Steinbeck was highlighting how vulnerable people in society like Candy, how actually they weren't protected and how they were treated very, very poorly in 1930s American society. So let's look at how Candy is described when we first meet him. The door opened and a tall, stoop-shouldered old man came in. He was dressed in blue jeans and he carried a big push broom in his left hand. So, like the other men, he's wearing blue jeans, so he's a general labourer on this farm. But Steinbeck emphasises that he's an old man and he's stoop-shouldered. So he's so old actually that he's starting to hunch over, which, if we think about the imagery, it creates a sense of vulnerability there about Candy. And we know that Candy is an old swamper. So a swamper on a ranch was just a kind of general labourer, someone that would go around and do the odd jobs on the ranch. And very soon afterwards, we find out that he is also disabled. So he pointed with his right arm, and out of the sleeve came a round stick-like wrist, but no hand. So Candy's, in that sense, when we first meet him, we start to sense that vulnerability. And of course, we can't talk about Candy without talking about his old dog. So that dog follows him everywhere. The old man came slowly into the room, and at his heels there walked a drag-footed sheepdog, grey of muzzle and with pale, blind old eyes. So like Candy, his dog is also old and also disabled because he's blind. So the kind of symbolism there of the dog representing Candy is quite overt and made quite clear by John Steinbeck. But like Candy, the dog used to be very young, very fit, very valuable to a farm. So Candy says, I had him ever since he was a pup. God, he was a good sheepdog when he was younger. And later on, Candy says, yes, he was one of the best. So this dog has been very, very valuable in terms of the running of the farm in its life. But now it's in its retirement years, it's old and it stinks. And it follows Candy around because Candy is his owner and his friend. But we can see from the third quote how Carlson in particular, but the other men feel about this. Well, I can't stand him in here, said Carlson. That stink hangs around even after he's gone. He ain't no good to you, Candy, and he ain't no good to himself. Why don't you shoot him, Candy? So this is the interesting bit to think about what John Steinbeck is saying here. So if we think about capitalism, the idea that everything's focused on profit making, the dog was valuable when it was able to work on the farm and actually contribute to the running of the farm. But now that it's old, Carlson sees that it has no value. Even though to Candy, the dog is his companion, it's his friend, Carlson doesn't recognise that as being important. So there's a theme of companionship in there as well, as kind of a critique, I think, of capitalism. The idea that you're only valuable if you're able to help make a profit. And we know obviously that the dog represents Candy. So again, it's the same idea with Candy, that once he's getting older and he can't work, he has no value within society and he's not looked after within society. And then, of course, we have Slim, the godlike character, who says to Candy, "Carl's right, Candy, that dog ain't no good to himself. I wish someone would shoot me if I got old and a cripple." Now imagine how that would feel to hear that if you were Candy, who is old and who has lost his hand. But I think Slim acknowledges here that actually it's a very horrible situation to be old and alone and disabled in 1930s America, because there's no backup. There's no strong welfare system. There's no kind of state support. If you don't have family to look after you, then you're by yourself. So it's very, very tragic if we think about what Candy's future might look like. And he even says to George and Lenny, "I ain't got no relatives nor nothing." So all Candy has really is his dog and his job. And once his dog's shot, and when he eventually will lose his job on the ranch, what does Candy's future look like? Very likely a life in poverty, really. So Candy sat on the edge of the bunk. He scratched the stump of his wrist nervously. "I got hurt 4 years ago," he said. "They'll can me pretty soon. Just as soon as I can't swamp out no bunkhouses, they'll put me out on the county." He said miserably, "You seen what they done to my dog tonight? They says he wasn't no good to himself nor nobody else. When they can me here, I wish somebody would shoot me. But they won't do nothing like that. I won't have no place to go, and I can't get no more jobs." So Candy knows what his future looks like. And it's a pretty depressing situation. And Candy starts to express the idea of the American dream when he says, "Candy cried, sure they all want it. Everybody wants a little bit of land, not much, just something that was his. Something he could live on, and there couldn't nobody throw him off of it. I never had none. I planted crops for damn near everybody in this state, but they wasn't my crops. And when I harvested them, it wasn't none of my harvest." So John Steinbeck really emphasises here, Candy has worked for almost, well, he says damn near everybody in this state, so that's a bit of hyperbole there, but Candy's worked on lots of different ranches, and he has helped lots of different ranch owners and bosses make money. But yet, once Candy's not useful anymore, he is cast aside, and he's not valuable, and he's got no one, and he's got nothing. But Candy has a brief glimmer of hope when he hears George and Lenny talking. "George, how long's it going to be till we get that little place and live on the fat of the land and rabbits?" "I don't know," said George. "We got to get a big stake together. I know a little place we can get cheap, but they ain't giving it away." Old Candy turned slowly over. His eyes were wide open. He watched George carefully. So we see this moment, I think, for Candy, where he gets this moment of hope. And I think by using 3 short, simple sentences in a row, which John Steinbeck does here at the end, old Candy turned slowly over, full stop. His eyes were wide open, full stop. He watched George carefully, full stop. Those 3 sentences almost like give extra impact to what Candy's feeling at that moment. This kind of abrupt feeling that, wait a minute, life could be different. Something could change here. And of course, Candy, George and Lenny, they decide that they're going to get their stake together. They're going to go and get work on their own land together. And we have a very, very short amount of time where they have this dream. And Candy is so excited about it that even when Lenny is in with crooks, Candy comes to find him just because he's been thinking about how they could make some money from the rabbits. But after Lenny kills Curly's wife at the very end, Candy spoke his greatest fear. You and me can get that little place, can't we, George? You and me can go there and live nice, can't we, George? Can't we? Before George answered, Candy dropped his head and looked at the hay. He knew. So again, we've got a really powerful use of language here by Steinbeck. We've got this pleading tone. Can't we, George? Can't we, George? Can't we? So that repetition of can't we, I think it does show the desperation that Candy's feeling there and the questioning as he almost realises, we almost see him or hear him realise his dream is slipping beneath his fingers, and actually that he's not going to be able to get the land, and his future has gone from having a tiny bit of hope to desolation again. And again, we've got this short, blunt sentence, he knew, full stop. This short, punchy, powerful sentence, I think it emphasises that moment of dread that Candy's feeling. He knows his dream is over. And in that chapter, the second to last chapter, we have these descriptions of Candy which make him a very pitiful character. His eyes blinded with tears, and he turned and went weakly out of the barn, and he rubbed his bristly whiskers with his wrist stump. Old Candy lay down in the hay and covered his eyes with his arm. So the image we're left with of Candy at the end of the novella is definitely a sad one, a hopeless one. Which brings us back to the question again, what is John Steinbeck trying to say about society in 1930s America? Have a go and see if you can articulate your thoughts on that. And that would be a very, very helpful revision task, because if you're looking at Candy, obviously, if you've got a question on Candy, that'd be very helpful. But if you've got a question on loneliness, if you've got a question on power, this question would be relevant to all of those exam questions. So to summarise, Candy is only valuable when he can help other people make profit. His dog is only valuable when it can help the farm. When they're not valuable for the company they bring, they're not valuable for who they are intrinsically. So perhaps John Steinbeck is saying about capitalism that capitalism is a terrible system for the most vulnerable, and it does not work as a system, and it leaves those vulnerable people behind. Because in 1930s America, after the Wall Street crash, over 12 million people in America became unemployed. Poverty rates went up, and lots of different groups in society were impoverished in a myriad of different ways. So Candy represents some of those people. As always, if you've got any other thoughts about Candy, please put them in the comments below. Or if you've got any other questions about Candy or anything else about Of Mice and Men, please pop them in the comments so that I can address them in future videos.